every time it feels like a new experience to like do this.
Yeah.
Like every time the mic is in a different place, every time it's a different tripod. Because like now we have this one because this one is from my film class. But usually we borrow one from them. And the thing is, also usually we film on my phone. And the thing is, none of the tripods that they have phone mounts.
Oh.
So it's always an adventure to figure out how my phone is going to be mounted to the tripod each time.
Oh, I see. That's nice to keep it fresh despite it still being like another episode. The elements of it are very different. Yeah.
Same format, but new every time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Keeping it fresh, spicy.
Yes.
Speaking of spicy, I'm going to use that as the segue.
Okay.
We're just going to go for it. Keeping it spicy. Good after morning and welcome to On the Dome, a podcast about how non-expert college-age youth think. And today we have a very spicy, fiery lineup of topics, and we have you as our guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Kano, and I'm a junior at MIT studying 2 and 17, which is mechanical engineering and political science. And I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and both of my parents had immigrated from Thailand. And now I'm in Cambridge.
And now we're in Cambridge. Yeah, very exciting.
And I'm right here.
Yeah, right here. Las Vegas, that's a fun place. Also very hot place.
Hot in both respects, or I guess several respects, yeah.
Yeah. So the reason for all of the spicy fire puns is because you have a very interesting combination of backgrounds, which is you are a fire spinner at MIT. And you also like spicy food, which is the other thing, which is why there's hot sauce on the table. Do you want to talk about the fire spinning first or the spicy food first?
Maybe the hot sauce, just because that's closer to my roots, and fire spinning is much more of a recent development.
Yeah, we'll go chronologically.
Yeah.
All right, tell me about Sriracha.
Sriracha, all right. Well, it all started in the town of Sriracha in Thailand, which is where, I guess it's a region, it's a province, where my family is from. So hot sauce Sriracha originated there, and we just always have loved it, especially in the States. It's nice to have that little piece of home. Also, because I go to dining halls around here and have found the food kind of bland, it's nice to have one in my bag ready to go. I like the feeling, I like the taste. There's hot sauce all around. It's good for me. Yeah.
I found that when I came to college, because I'm Indian, so we also eat spicy food. I was never a huge spicy food person at home. I mean, the food that my mom cooked was its level of spice, but I was never like into hot sauce or this or that. And then I got to the dining halls and I was like, oh, I get it. I get why hot sauce is a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sriracha was something I actually discovered in college. Because I never put hot sauce on my food because I was like, why am I going to put hot sauce on Indian food? What's the point of that? But yeah, Sriracha is so good, which makes it very upsetting that suddenly all the Sriracha has disappeared.
Yeah, it's so sad. There's this shortage in the country because the company Hoi Fong has a shortage of pepper supply.
Oh wow!
Since in Mexico there's a big drought, and so it's gone. Originally they sourced from California, where if they still source in California today, we would not be in this shortage issue. But there was a dispute between the owners. I don't feel like hashing it out. It's like some financial thing, and so because of that, it just. So the one I actually have here is not even the official Hoi Fong Sriracha. That is like the one in the media. Instead, it's a knockoff, but it's better than having no hot sauce. So
totally, I think Trader Joe's makes a knockoff too.
Yeah, Trader Joe's is a knockoff of everything, don't they?
Yeah, they're really amazing at like taking these things and like we're going to Trader Joe'sify it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like because they have like the Trader Jose and like they basically all these different traders with various Joe-themed names from various backgrounds. It's very interesting. But yeah, Sriracha is delicious. I feel like we should like eat some Sriracha now.
Do you want some?
I mean...
Okay. Would you like to have some of this bottle?
Sure, I mean...
Or...
If you're okay with me taking some of your Sriracha.
No, I'm perfectly fine. So this one, the cap is actually broken. But I do have my... This is the one I carry on my backpack. So for emergencies, very quick. Yeah. I've never taken it direct here. I'll have some and then I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah.
I just put it on my finger. It's really.
Just do like a line.
Yeah, a line of hot sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here you go. Okay. This one's more sour and tangy as opposed to the one that's usually available.
There we go.
I used it last night on, like, there was butternut squash lasagna from an event I went to, and it was good, but it wasn't quite.
I'm having trouble with this cap. This cap is giving me difficulties. Okay, there we go.
You just twist it good? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the sriracha cap because with like traditional caps that open like this, it's more prone to just like spilling in bags. So this one's like this takes so much effort. So this is solid. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I miss having it in the dining halls.
Yeah, they don't have it anymore. Although New Vassar does have a lot of like selection, like 20 or 30 hot sauces. So
yes, I do like that about New Vassar. It's nice to. I also think that even though like I didn't grow up with hot sauce, it's nice to like bring some of yourself into the food you eat. I feel like with dining halls too, it's so hard because even when they make food from, for example, if they make Indian food, it's like, this is not the exact same. This is not anywhere close to what I'm used to eating. So it's like nice to make it your own a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like dining hall inventions are a pretty big thing here. I don't know if, like, I feel like a lot of people do like mashups of different foods or like, I mean, the one that I always reference is Liam, friend of the show, does Pilk, Pepsi milk.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any dining hall inventions that you do?
Inventions?
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. I think the one thing that I do at Massey is at the end, after I finish my meal of like savory stuff, I normally want something more fresh, just to, like walk out feeling fresh. So then I get, I don't know, this is like a creation, but I get Greek yogurt and then I put all the melons on top, like there's the cantaloupe and whatever the green one is, and then I put on like honey and nuts, and that's very, very yummy.
That sounds good. Yeah. The only one that I do is I'm always trying to eat more vegetables because MIT Dining's vegetarian options are not exactly to my tastes.
Yeah.
So when I first got here, what I would do is what I affectionately called a sushi salad. No relation to Japan, but it was just white rice, spinach, and then soy sauce. And then I would eat that. And it was like close enough to something that I was like, this will get spinach inside of me. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like now taking a different angle on hot sauces, I also feel like people at MIT specifically have a little bit of a love for danger. People kind of want to like test themselves and like go for it. And that is very related to another thing that you're involved in, which is fire spinning. Tell me about fire spinning.
Oh, it's so fun. I've done it since my freshman fall, like since the very beginning. I just remember going through a list of all the clubs here and I thought, oh, that one sounds really cool. I've never heard of it before. I've never done this before. I just want to go to one of their performances and see how it goes. And I remember being really amazed. Wow, they seem so calm despite, fire being like a very dangerous thing to work with. And the shows are really beautiful. There's such a strong mix of technical ability, like being able to spin and manipulate the fire. I think the term is object manipulation. And two, like artistry. People blending the music in, deciding like do they match the rhythm or do they match like the beats. It's really, really cool to see put together. So yeah, I was very drawn to fire spinning. And then I went to one of the practices and I just like kind of stuck with it ever since. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about like what does fire spinning encompass? We have this amazing thing. I don't know what this is.
Right. Oh yes, there are things on the table. Okay. So, I'll answer your first question. Like, what is fire spinning? It's kind of encompassed in the term, right? So you like spin fire, and it revolves around different fire props. So there are static props and dynamic props. Static props are ones that are like the body of the prop is like stable and it's one contiguous, like it stays the same. And dynamic is things that involve rope. So yeah, more dynamic. And that's basically fire spinning, like being able to move these things around in particular ways. I also want to note that the official name of the club is called the Spinning Arts Team because we spin not only fire but also light. So we'll just have light up ends for people who don't like want to work with fire or there's like a whole other world of things you can do with light, because like you can make direct contact with it. You can program the light so they change colors at certain points. So yeah, so spinning arts team. Let's talk about the props I have here today. This first long thing here with like crosses and wicks on each end is called a dragon staff, and this type of prop is known to like have the most fire. I love the dragon staff. I've done it for about a year or two now. It's the prop that moves the slowest. It's very graceful and because it's just heavier. And yeah.
And so each of these you light on fire.
Yes. Yeah, it's very fun. And right now they're covered up with baby socks. And the reason why the baby socks, is because big socks just like don't really sit on it well. And it's cheaper to just buy baby socks instead of like very specific like fire or whatever props. They do the same thing. And we want to protect the wicks so that they don't wear off as easily.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. They're made of, the body is made of aluminum, and the wicks are made of Kevlar, and the taping around here is for grip, and that's made of Nimbus tape.
Nimbus tape.
Nimbus tape. Yeah, there's a variety of tapes available, but Nimbus is helpful for like traction. There's a variety of tapes along here to keep it together. There's like silicone tape and electrical tape just to keep things all right. Of course, the red tape for the center of gravity. So that's the dragon staff. And I named the dragon staff Beulah, or more like my friend. I asked my friends, like, what do you want? I can't come up with the name. One of my friends came up with Beulah, and I loved it. It's like, sounds old. I feel like the dragon staff is like, it feels like an old, wise prop. And the rope dart's named Tet, which I named on the way here.
Nice.
Tet.
Because you knew that it would come up.
It would come up, and I've been trying to think of a name for it. I thought, well, now I should come up with one now.
Yeah.
I've been trying for a long time because of tetherball. It's like, oh, tetherball.
Oh, sick! Yeah.
Tet
So
and
this
Beulah.
is a dynamic prop.
Yes. So the dynamic and that's a static prop.
Nice. So take us back to freshman fall. You've just seen this show. You go to the first meeting, I guess, of the spinning arts. And how did they start you off?
Oh, good question. They're so welcoming. So there's two types of practices that happen throughout the week. On Mondays, 6 to 8 p.m., there are spin jams, and that's where you just like spin stuff. And then later in the week, they host fire jams where you spin stuff on fire. So spin jams, like it's off fire, and so they want you to get used to the moves and comfortable with it before you ever touch fire.
Totally.
So I went to a spin jam, and the team has a variety of props available. So it feels like. Have you ever seen Pixie Hollow or Tinkerbell stuff?
I read those books.
You read the
I don't think I
books?
ever saw the TV show, but I loved the books.
Okay. Well, I wonder if the books also had this scene where Tinkerbell was born, and then she had to pick her talent. Like, am I a water fairy, a light fairy, or a tinker fairy? So it feels like that with like fire spinning. Like you have all your props, and you can try them out and see which one you're drawn more to.
Totally.
So I just messed around with a couple of different props. When I appeared, they're very welcoming because they know who's been before and who's new. Like, oh, anyone new? They give you an introduction a little bit, and then you can ask like, oh, I like this prop. Can someone teach me a move? And people who've been in the club longer are like, yeah, I'm happy to show you how you use the prop. And if you don't know how to use a prop, or there's no one on the team that has used it before, or you want to learn a certain move that no one knows, you can just pull up a video and it's practice around, and people are around to also help with pointers and developing those skills. So yeah, it's very welcoming. Kind of just you show up, there's props, and you play around with the props, and people help you learn the props.
And so that's how you learn the moves. And then when did you first get to set something on fire?
Oh, the first time was you had to go through a fire safety training, and those are 2 or 3 hours long. They're a little bit rigorous. They're typically on a weekend, so they give you a full rundown of fires spinning, what it is, what fire itself is, and all things you need to know before you spin. And at that training, after they finish the presentation, you have to go through a test where it sounds more bad than it actually is, but someone on the team sets themselves on fire and you have to put it out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to be able to do that before you're able to actually spin on fire, because it shows okay, you know how to work with the fire. I need to explain that a bit more. It's they set something that's natural fiber on fire, like jeans or cotton, because that doesn't like it's important to use natural fibers instead of synthetic fibers because natural ones just like burn away, or synthetic like it's like plastic, like it melts into the skin, which is way worse. And
Totally.
fire takes a while to actually hurt, um, and also people tend to. There's never been a major fire accident, but like parts of hair catch fire or like parts of clothes catch fire during fire sessions. So you have to be comfortable being able to put it out. I put out fires and stuff before. So there's that. And then after that is when you're able to spin on fire at a fire jam. And the way it works is anytime you see someone spinning on fire, there's always one other person that is watching them with a fire blanket. That's what's on the table here. We call it a duvet or a duvet. Holding a fire safety blanket, like intently watching that person the entire time. And if that person ever catches fire, you just say their name, the part that's caught on fire, and then you go and put it out. So like I would say like Mehek, hair, and then it would like go over.
My hair actually has caught on fire before.
Oh, what? Tell me more.
It was not as exciting of a story. I was like 7, and you know how restaurants will have the candles on the table.
Yeah.
So I was 7, and it was pretty late, and I was out with my parents. They were still eating their dinner. I was super tired. I like just put my like head on my arms, and I was like, I'm gonna go take a little nap, and my hair got into the candle and started burning. And you know, my parents probably dumped water on my head, and it smelled like burnt hair for the rest of the evening. But I was completely fine. But yeah, it's nice to honestly. Maybe that's like the reason I keep my hair so long. It's like I got a little bit of time, you know, before I.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were okay in the end.
Yeah, I was fine.
What people do with long hair on the team is they before shows they like dunk their head in water so it's all wet.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
It's always complicated with long hair too because I did wood shop last semester, and that was definitely a thing where I was like, I have to have my hair completely tied back. You don't want your hair getting like caught in a table saw. That would not be ideal.
Yeah, makerspaces really hate hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you got trained. You put out a fire that someone set on their person, and then you started doing fire spinning. And so you do performances for that as well.
Yeah.
So what would you say your favorite part is? Is it the performances? Is it just the art of it all?
I think it might be the art of it. I really just like the experience of practicing and spinning it all is very, very fun. I like that with fire, it like demands your attention, so you have to be very present throughout the entire time. Like your mind can't wander. Or I guess it shouldn't for safety reasons. So yeah, I like how when I spin, I'm fully spinning the entire time. But performances also are quite fun. I think it ties into it because I'm like spinning during performances, right? So I like that, like the capstone of a performance. Because on top of it being fire, you now have an audience to take into account, and with any performance, people who even they kind of like this, or people who perform musically or whatever, or in a sport and have to do a game. Like in those moments, you're locked in. So yeah, but ultimately, I like the artistry of it.
I think that what you said about attention is really interesting, especially in college. I feel like there's so many things demanding attention, and also like with technology nowadays, it's like our attention is so like short in some ways, and so I think it's really it's like meditative for you.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
very meditative. Yeah. At first, it was scary. It took me a while to get comfortable with the fire. I remember my first 2 performances. I felt technically capable, but there was still like a part of me. I was like, oh, am I gonna like mess up this fire and accidentally burn myself? But afterwards, getting used to it, you understand how the fire behaves, and it's really like you take the precautions. It's really not that dangerous. So, yeah. I do feel very zen when spinning.
Yeah, I think that most people might perceive fire spinning as this like daredevil, motorcycles, like Guy Fieri jumping over the Grand Canyon. I mean, I feel like I'm saying all these like very associated with Las Vegas things.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's like a misconception, or do you think that people do get into it because they're daredevils and then it like changes to be this more artistic, meditative thing? Like, would you consider yourself a daredevil?
I guess I have like done sort of things I think people would consider daredevil-y stuff, and maybe it's not the forefront in my head when I think like what are words I would use to describe myself. But yeah, I guess so. I'm known. Well, I don't know if I'm known. I know that I like to take risks.
Right.
I take big risks, but they're all often very calculated risks. Like it's like there's a lot of mental calculation before deciding to fire spin. But to answer your first question of like why do people join and like, is it for artistry or daredevil stuff? I think it's a mix of both. I think typically, I think it starts with just like, oh, I think that looks really cool, and then people get in through there. Daredevil-ish. I mean, I lived at East Campus,
Right.
a dorm on campus that's like is known for its like daredevil-y, counterculture-y type vibe. So I think that adds to it. There's definitely people across like I think there's someone from every dorm at some point has been involved. So it's open. But yeah, at first it looks very daredevil-y and scary, but when you actually practice it, it's not bad. Yeah.
I want to go back to the thing that I said at the beginning about danger and like MIT people, I think, have this like, in a lot of ways, have like this desire for things that might seem very dangerous or like this like, what I mean by that is there's a lot of culture around, counterculture and like doing things that are outside the norm, fire spinning. There's an MIT caving club and they teach you how to rappel down the staircases. We have rock climbing. We have all these different like sort of extreme things. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on like the combination of your fire spinning and the rest of your life at MIT and like the rest of what MIT is like and how those things tie together.
I think fire spinning has reinforced my belief in that like to limit as many assumptions as possible. Like first assumptions like, oh, it's very dangerous, I can never do that, I know I'm a very clumsy person, it seems like they would get hurt, I don't know how to dance, I've never danced before, how would I be able to choreograph a whole set? Like I had all these assumptions going in, but then I learned, no, like fire is really not that bad to work with. You can learn to dance by practicing and having fun with all these people around you. Yeah, I think a way that is connected to some stuff, like, some departments. Like, I didn't know if I'd be all that interested in public policy before coming to MIT. I had, like, a sense. I'd done some political stuff before, but I just thought, I can't see myself working in the political space. It seems messy and bad. But then I am taking a making public policy class right now. I've met people who are working in the department, and it's so much more than what my initial perception was of it. Like, you can be an advisor, like someone who's non-political but works in the political space. You can, it doesn't have to be your main job. It can be like a hobby where you like help work for a local organization. There are a lot of different ways to do it. And so, yeah, fire spinning helped reinforce my belief in not seeing things like monolithically.
Totally. I think that not many people would expect that there's a big fire spinning community in what is, perceived as this like very prestigious engineering school. But I mean, I think that what you said about limiting assumptions is so accurate with also what I think I hope people understand more about both MIT and college in general. I think there are a lot of, especially with some more academically focused institutions, people are like, it must be so stressful, everyone must be the exact same. MIT is the place where nobody is the same. Everybody is so wildly different. And I think that also, like, people come into the school with such I think that a lot of people come into the school and have the same experience of, like, broadening their minds, opening their assumptions. And I think that that's a very universal college thing. It's like, you come here and you can kind of just be, who you are instead of who you have been. And you can, like, expose yourself to all these different things that change what you thought could be possible, The other thing I was thinking about in terms of MIT and, like, fire spinning and all these other dangerous things, like, for example, like, wood shop and, like, making stuff is often very dangerous. You work with all these different tools. But, like, I thought about the mind and hands thing. Like, intelligence and studying and all of that is not just, like, sitting and writing a math problem. It's also, like, very physical, if that makes sense. Do you think that the physicality, like, helps you like mentally.
Could you go back and just elaborate more on what you mean by the physicality of working through like, problems or piece sets together?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, I was in the context of the fire spinning. I think that it's interesting because it relates to a lot of other things at MIT where there's both a very physical, hands-on aspect and there's a very mental aspect. So you talked a lot about it being meditative and demanding attention. So that's a lot of how your mind works, I guess, or like how like controlling what your mind is doing. But then obviously there's the physicality of actually doing the motions. And I see some parallels in that to, like, for example, doing stuff in woodshop where there's a mental aspect, there's a physical aspect. And I just was wondering how you, like, does one influence the other? Does one help the other?
Well, everything is connected to everything, right? And
It's
I think,
all connected.
yes, and everything. And to answer your question, like, those are very, very closely connected. Yeah, I think that I how to describe? I find that I make less clumsy mistakes when I'm very present. Because I find myself being a clumsy person when my mind drifts off and I daydream and then I just, like, I don't know, trip or, like, accidentally knock something off the table. And I have found that with, like, fire spinning, especially with the dragon staff, because it's a more graceful and, like, slow prop, I just, like, move more. I'm saying I move elegantly, but, like, I
move more intentionally?
More intentionally, yeah. I mean, more in tune with, like, my physical body more. And since the practice of fire spinning at its core is just object manipulation, I found that I I don't know. It's interesting looking at objects and thinking, oh, I wonder how that would interact. Like, when I first saw a fire spinning staff, I'm like, oh, that's just a long cylinder, but you can use it very artistically. It's, you know, so it gives you a different perspective on your relationship to objects around you.
Totally. The other thing that I was thinking about was, like, you talked about the mental influencing the physical.
Yeah.
I think that with a lot of things too, it's like the physical sort of influences the mental. So what I was thinking about when you were saying that was yoga. I've taken a bunch of yoga classes at MIT, and I always find that, like, it's easier for me to meditate right after a yoga session because after, you know, being so in tune with what my body is doing, the physicality, the breath, all of that, it sort of gets my mind into a really good state, like a really, like, flow state. So it's like they kind of both help each other. And I think that I don't know, the idea of, like, intelligence and thinking and problem solving being both a very physical and a very mental thing, and, like, the body and the brain kind of helping each other, it's, I think, surprisingly a very influential thing at MIT. Like, I don't think people would think that people here are as hands-on or as physical. A lot of people do a lot of these different athletic things as well. Would you consider this athletic or artistic or both?
It's both.
Both?
Yeah, because some of the moves require you need to have, like, a certain physical ability to do some of the moves. This is a very heavy prop, so it just, like, is taxing on the arms at times. Or with rope dart, you have to be able to spin in certain ways, and this movement over and over gets a little tiring. Yeah, and of course it's, like, artistic because of the performances.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with, like, how both, like, physical sensations can inform mental sensations. I practiced a bit of yoga back on my gap year. This was like 2-3 years ago. I do, like, stretching now, but not as much yoga. But I do respect the practice. Yeah, I wanted to also just elaborate more on the connection that you were talking about, specifically on now my mind is trained to look for different ways to physically interact with things. I remember, like, when I go to some public events, like, I went to a Billy Joel concert last week or 2 weeks ago. Billy Joel was, like, spinning this mic stand in a very certain way. I'm like, that looks a lot like fire spinning. And I remember I mentioned this in the fire spinning Discord, and someone messaged, like, oh, I was at a concert and someone was spinning the mic around like a rope dart and, like, doing some moves. I'm like, what a... Yeah. So it's just cool to think how, like, you're, because of, like, physically doing this, my mind is trained to look for things like that. And also, like, because you, like, physically do yoga, your mind is more prepped for, like, going into more of a flow state.
Totally, yeah. It's very interesting. I never thought I was going to come to MIT and be like, wow, I'm so much more physically in tune with myself.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things about MIT also is that PE classes are required, so they very much mind and body, mind and hands here.
Yeah. I don't know if people know, but the motto for MIT is mens and manus, which is mind and hand.
Yeah. It says that on our rings.
Our little rings.
Yes.
Yeah.
In very, very tiny letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely mind and hands is a huge thing here. The other thing I was thinking about was limitations, and I'm going to bring it back to the hot sauce for a second.
Oh.
I think that one of the reasons also I asked about Daredevil was I think that there is a little bit of a Daredevil-y, counterculture, challenge, challenge accepted kind of vibe at MIT. People like pushing past limits. People like breaking the rules a little bit. People like, that sort of thing. And I think that hot sauce is sort of an analog for that, like, spicy food, the challenge of it all. And then also fire spinning is, inherently it's like a lot of things, a challenge. It's like something new. You were saying, like, it helped you push past these limitations. Do you think that at MIT we have a culture of, like, wanting to challenge these limitations, wanting to not be, like, wanting to break the rules and, like, push past these, like, preconceived notions?
Well, the question comes in 3 parts. So, like the first one of, what was it, counterculture? Of just, like, pushing things and trying something new. I mean, yeah, I feel like that, MIT just, what I found really empowering here, as opposed to where I'd gone to high school and, like, grown up, is if I have an idea on how to do something, there are so many pathways to do it. Like, MIT offers a lot of resources and opportunities to do things, and so they're like, here's a bunch of stuff, now, like, go for it, right? Yeah, I feel like MIT students to a good extent, but also to sometimes people's demise, like to push their limits a lot.
Yeah.
I know that I'm the type of person that I like to exceed my limits and then dial back, because now I know where my limit is at. I know that's not everyone's style, but I'm doing that very early on, so I don't, like, just burn out the entire time.
Right.
And by that I mean, like, I joined, like, a bazillion clubs, and I'm like, okay, I like these, now I'm gonna just, like, focus on these.
Definitely.
Something like that. And then I think your second point was more, what was it, like, rules-based?
Like breaking the rules, or breaking, not even rules necessarily, but just, like, boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that, for example, like, things that are considered dangerous or things that are considered, like, extreme or whatever, there's a certain attraction to that at MIT. I feel like that people want to break past these traditional or, like, generally accepted boundaries and challenge things.
That reminds me of the MIT president's motto. Sally Kornbluth has this, like, curiosity unbounded thing, right? Where it's like, we are not bounded, we're just gonna so yeah, I think people like to extend beyond what is beyond the status quo. Yeah, there's a lot of optimization for maximum something here, so yeah, definitely. And what was your last point?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
It was something along those lines, but I don't know. I just think it's interesting to discuss how, like, this, because they seem so, like, separate, this, like, idea of academia and, studying and intelligence and all this stuff, and then on the complete, like, sort of other axis, I think, in perception, it's just, like, challenging things, breaking the rules, whatever, being counterculture, and, like, exploring what counterculture is. And I think that it's interesting when those things intersect, and it's interesting how they are kind of, like, I feel like at this point MIT has challenged my belief that those things are different. I feel like now I believe that, like, with studying and acquiring more knowledge, you're inherently going to challenge things and inherently going to have to challenge yourself to, like, to tie it back to your earlier point, like, let go of your preconceived notions and, like, push past your limits and, be also more well-rounded. I think that there's an idea that, like, intelligence has to be this one thing in one direction. And I think that I feel like, and I feel like what you've been saying too, is, like, going in some of these tangential directions can actually further your ability to be, intelligent or just like think in an interesting, new, innovative way. It's not just one direction,
Yeah. It reminds me of something I said earlier about how everything is connected.
Everything is connected.
So, you never know how something will inform something else. Mm-hmm. And I think, at least how I go about life is, like, if my intuition or gut is pulling me one direction, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll help me with other things that I already do. Maybe not, but it's just, I think that people will lead better lives if they went by, what their gut really wants. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the best thing, but your gut really is ultimately who you are, right? Like, every human, we have very fundamental needs and wants, but there are some inexplicable things, like, I love the color purple, or, you like to, think the host podcast. And is there any particular reason why I love purple? No, I just like it. And the other reasons why you like to podcast, I'm sure there are things that, you could say, like socializing is a new thing. You can, it's cool, but, there's a core, at some point you can't ask why anymore. It's like, oh, yeah, I like this.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think that for me also, when I feel drawn to something, sometimes it's better to just go for it and then figure out how it makes sense later.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier to, from where I am today, be like, oh, of course I chose to do computer science because, X, Y, and Z. And, oh, of course I did this podcast because X, Y, and Z. And, oh, of course it all adds up to be, this person who I am, and it's useful and it's great and whatever. But, at the end of the day, I think that most of that knowledge and that being like, oh, of course that made sense, only comes, after you dive in. So I feel like my attitude has always been, follow what, my instincts are telling me, and then figure out how it makes sense later. Because it always, in my view, it always will end up making sense, because whatever you're drawn to is just part of who you are, and how you live and how you want to live your life. And if you follow the things that are calling you and are things that speak to, what you desire, it will all make sense because you're the same person. It's going to fit in with the rest of your life. It will have a cohesive story or whatever. It will all connect because it's the same person doing all of it, right?
That's so true. Yeah. That, it just reminds me that we're all, kind of mysteries to ourselves. And,
I do not understand half of what's going on up here.
No.
But you just gotta, sometimes you just gotta be like, you know what, we're gonna try it.
Yeah.
This is what I feel like I need to do. I'm gonna do it and figure it out later.
And I think a good way to solidify that point is think of the counterexample. Say you didn't just go for it, you instead, instead of, justifying things afterwards, you try to justify ahead of time, oh, I think I would like this because of X, Y, and Z and whatever, or, oh, I don't think I'll like this because of X, Y, and Z. It's you can reason yourself out of doing things that your gut wants you to do. And I feel like you can't explore, know yourself until you've done it, right? You don't know till you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sort of like running experiments. Let me see how this goes, and if not, I'll dial back. But I try my hardest not to reason myself out of things until I've experienced it to some extent. Some things I know about myself, I prefer, let's see, I like cold weather. So, okay, I'm going to go to Boston. I don't need to go to, Vegas, but weather's okay, but it's very, very hot. So my adulthood, right, your past can inform the future, but I think that one should lean into their intuition more.
Yeah, definitely. For example, trying to figure out what field I was going to go into in computer science, which right now my guess is computer graphics. I don't know. I was thinking about different fields, and I was like, I think computer graphics, but I was like, how would I know? I've never done computer graphics before. But I was like, well, that can't stop me from doing computer graphics. The only way I'm going to find out is if I guess something and then go figure it out. And then I can always change my mind later. But my intuition was telling me something. And if I had just been like, oh, but I don't have this experience and I don't have that background and it doesn't make sense for me to be in this space, then everyone has to start somewhere. Everyone starts with zero experience in everything. And then you just figure it out. So I think that sometimes diving in, sometimes we need to think less, I think. is
feel more.
Feel more, yeah.
As Barbie, the movie, once said. Yeah.
Yeah, just feel.
There's this great quote from Oprah where she
Mhm.
said, life is always whispering to you.
Yeah,
You have to,
it
listen
is.
to those whispers.
Definitely. And sometimes like subconscious stuff can like sometimes we can figure things out in our subconscious and before we can figure it out in our conscious. And so I guess fire spinning is an example of that. Where it's like, sometimes you just have to dive in and then and then you have this great experience and it's artistic and athletic and meditative and all this stuff. And you would never have you probably didn't guess that it would mean that specifically to you before you started it, right?
No, not at all. I just thought that's cool. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
But like there was something. Maybe your subconscious knew the whole time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it's good to. I also think it's good to do things that challenge your assumptions and challenge what you think you can do. So sometimes that is, spinning fire on a stick around your head, and sometimes that's eating a ton of hot sauce, and sometimes that's building a chair or doing yoga or whatever.
Yeah.
But challenging the destruction of self. You are a story you keep telling
my
yourself.
God. Yes. Have you seen Tar?
Have I seen Tar? I don't
The
think so.
movie?
No.
Okay, so Tar, I think won the Oscar for Best Film like last year or 2 years ago. It is so good. I bring this up. It's related to what you said. It's about this orchestra director. Her name's Lydia Tar. This is a fictional character. And at some point she was giving the speech to music students. She was a professor as well. And she said, like, you must, like, obliterate yourself in the performance.
It's like, I think that, and this is sort of going back to another earlier point, a conversation's just going all over the place. But everything's connected. But one of the things we were talking about earlier is like this idea that when you come to college, you can be who you are then instead of who you have been. And I think that like, this is an idea I've been thinking a lot about is the destruction of yourself. Like the destruction of the idea of who you have been in pursuit of, who you are currently.
Yeah.
And I think that college can be that medium to destroy all of what you thought about yourself. Like, I did not think I was going to be hosting a podcast when I came to MIT, but here we are. And you did not think that you would be fire spinning when you came to MIT, and yet here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this delicate balance of knowing your core values and like this essence of who you are and maintaining that, but also being open to the world of possibilities and trying new things. So it's fun sort of going through life and picking up things along the way that you think like line up with your sense of self. And they're throwing them away when they don't line up and they wade in and out of life or whatever. It's
yeah. So there's like a quote that's like the one constant in life is change.
Oh yeah.
And so I think I have a really give me like 1 second because I think I'm like on the precipice of a really good sentence segue to end the episode. So
Ooh.
I'm gonna do my best to like get this out in a clear sentence. Life has its ups and downs. It has its changes. We go in one phase and out of the other phase. But like the dragon staff, we just got to keep spinning. And on that note, thank you so much for listening. And this has been On the Dome. I think that was a pretty fiery episode. I think that we had some hot takes.
Oh, yeah.
Sparks were flying.